I live on Sycamore Ridge Lane in a planned community outside Denver, Colorado, where property lines matter and parking regulations exist for a reason. My driveway is clearly marked, clearly visible, and clearly mine. For 3 years, I had zero issues with any neighbor until Derek moved in next door with his 38 FT Class A motorhome and decided my driveway was an acceptable overflow lot for his recreational vehicle. What followed was not a screaming match or a fistfight. It was a masterclass in documentation, municipal code enforcement, and the strategic application of heavy machinery. The entire situation cost him $8,400 in fines, towing fees, impound charges, and legal costs. I spent $1,200 total, and every dollar was worth it. I bought my house in 2019. It is a corner property with a wraparound driveway that provides access from both Sycamore Ridge Lane and the adjacent side street, Pinewood Court. The driveway is paved, marked with a curb cut, and recorded on the county plat map. I have the deed, the survey, and the title insurance policy all filed in a fireproof box in my office. I am not careless about what I own. Derek purchased the house next door in late April. He moved in over the course of a weekend with help from what appeared to be family members and a moving truck. I waved. He waved back. That was the extent of our interaction. 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning in early May, I walked outside to leave for a hardware store run and found a massive motorhome blocking the entire lower half of my driveway. The RV was a Winter Haven Titan, approximately 38 FT in length, with slide-outs, a roof-mounted AC unit, and a bike rack on the back. It was parked perpendicular to my driveway, completely obstructing my ability to exit onto Pinewood Court. The rear of the vehicle was on my property. The front was on the street. The entire setup made it physically impossible for me to leave. I walked next door and knocked. Derek answered in a tank top and cargo shorts. He was holding a coffee mug. I kept my tone neutral. I said, "Your RV is blocking my driveway. I need to leave." He glanced over at the motorhome, shrugged, and said, "I'll move it later. I'm not done with my coffee." I said, "I need to leave now." He looked at me for a long moment, then said, "Dude, relax. It's not that serious." Then he shut the door. I stood there for about 10 seconds processing what had just happened. Then I pulled out my phone and started taking photographs. I photographed the RV from 4 different angles. I photographed the position of the rear tires on my driveway. I photographed the curb, the property line, and the street sign at the corner. I photographed the timestamp on my phone's camera roll. Then I got in my car, backed out through the upper section of my driveway onto Sycamore Ridge, and drove to the hardware store using the long way around. When I returned 2 hours later, the RV was still there. I parked, went inside, opened my laptop, and began reading. I started with my HOA covenants, conditions, and restrictions. Section 12.3 stated that no recreational vehicle, boat, trailer, or camper may be parked on any street or driveway within the community for more than 48 consecutive hours without written approval from the Architectural Review Committee. I moved on to the county code. County Ordinance 42.18 prohibited any vehicle from blocking a driveway or curb cut for any period of time. Violation was subject to a fine of up to $150 per occurrence and potential towing at owner's expense. I also found a city code provision under Municipal Statute 9.07 that prohibited the obstruction of private property access and allowed property owners to pursue civil remedies, including injunctive relief. I now had 3 separate legal frameworks. I printed all of them. I created a binder with tabbed sections. Then I waited. The RV remained in place for the rest of Saturday. It was still there Sunday morning. I took additional photographs with timestamps. On Sunday afternoon, I drafted a formal written notice. It was polite, factual, and cited all 3 code sections. I printed 2 copies, signed both, and placed one in an envelope. I walked next door and knocked again. Derek answered. I handed him the envelope and said, "This is a formal notice that your RV is blocking my driveway and violating multiple codes. I need it moved by 8:00 a.m. tomorrow." He took the envelope, glanced at it, and laughed. He said, "You actually typed this up. Are you serious right now?" I said, "Yes." He shook his head and closed the door without another word. I photographed the second copy of the letter, noted the date and time of delivery, and added it to my binder. Monday morning arrived. The RV had not moved. At 8:15 a.m., I called the County Code Enforcement Office. I provided my name, my address, and a clear description of the violation. The woman on the phone said an inspector would be dispatched within 48 hours. I said that was fine and thanked her. Then I called the HOA management company. I spoke with a compliance officer named Angela. I explained the situation, referenced Section 12.3 of the CCRs, and offered to send photographic evidence. Angela said she would open a case file and send a violation notice to Derek within 3 business days. I thanked her and hung up. Then I sent both offices a follow-up email with all of my photographs attached, along with a written summary and timeline. Every email was BCC'd to my personal backup account. On Tuesday, a county inspector arrived. His name was Martin. He wore a county-issued polo and carried a clipboard. He walked the perimeter of the RV, took measurements, and photographed the position of the vehicle relative to my driveway. He knocked on Derek's door. No one answered. Martin left a yellow notice taped to the RV's driver's side window. The notice cited County Ordinance 42.18 and gave Derek 24 hours to move the vehicle or face a fine of $150. I approached Martin as he was returning to his truck and asked if I could receive a copy of the report. He said it would be available through a public records request in 5 business days. I submitted the request that afternoon online. Wednesday came and went. The RV did not move. The yellow notice was still taped to the window. On Thursday morning, I received an email from Angela at the HOA. It included a PDF of the violation notice that had been mailed to Derek. The notice cited Section 12.3, included photographs I had submitted, and gave Derek 7 calendar days to remove the RV or face fines of $100 per day. I printed the email and added it to my binder. That same afternoon, I received a voicemail from the county. The inspector had returned, confirmed the RV had not been moved, and issued a formal citation with a fine of $150. A second notice was posted. I saved the voicemail and added a note to my timeline. On Friday, I came home from work and found the RV still in place. But now there was something new. A handwritten note was tucked under my windshield wiper. It was written in blue ink on lined paper torn from a spiral notebook. It said, "Stop being a little bitch about this. It's just a driveway. Get over it." It was unsigned, but I recognized Derek's handwriting from the envelope I had seen him holding earlier in the week. I did not touch the note with my bare hands. I used a tissue to remove it from my windshield, placed it in a plastic sleeve, photographed it, and added it to my binder. Then I called the non-emergency police line and filed a report for harassment and intimidation. An officer came to my house within an hour, took my statement, photographed the note, and assigned a case number. I received a copy of the report by email that evening. The 7-day HOA deadline expired on the following Thursday. The RV had not moved. Angela contacted me and confirmed that daily fines of $100 would begin accruing as of Friday. She also said the HOA board would be voting on additional enforcement measures at the next monthly meeting, which was scheduled for the third Tuesday of the month. I thanked her and marked the meeting on my calendar. That weekend, I received the public records request from the county. It included the inspector's report, photographs, measurements, and copies of both citations. The report confirmed that the rear tires of the RV were 6.3 ft onto my property and that the vehicle obstructed access to a recorded curb cut. I added the report to my binder. By this point, 2 weeks had passed since the RV first appeared. I had filed complaints with the county and the HOA. I had a police report documenting a threatening note. I had a binder 3 inches thick with photographs, citations, code references, and time-stamped correspondence. And the RV had not moved 1 inch, so I escalated. I contacted a civil attorney who specialized in property disputes. Her name was Rachel Yee and her office was in downtown Denver. I scheduled a consultation for the following Tuesday. I brought my binder. Rachel reviewed the contents for approximately 20 minutes, asked a few clarifying questions, and then said, "You have an open and shut case for injunctive relief and trespass. We can file in county court and likely get a temporary restraining order within a week." I asked what that would cost. She said the retainer would be $2,500 and the total cost would likely be between $4,000 and $6,000 depending on whether Derek contested. I thanked her and said I would think about it. I did think about it for about 2 hours. Then I decided on a different approach. I called a commercial crane and rigging company called Summit Lift Solutions. I explained that I had a large RV illegally parked on my property and I wanted it removed and relocated to a tow impound lot. The dispatcher transferred me to a supervisor named Gary. Gary asked if I had legal authority to remove the vehicle. I said I did. I explained that I had documentation of trespass, county citations, HOA violations, and a police report. Gary said, "If you can provide proof of ownership of the property and documentation that the vehicle is unlawfully parked, we can do it, but it's not cheap." I asked how much. He said $1,200 for the crane, the flatbed transport, and delivery to an impound facility. I said that was fine. He said he would need to see the documentation in advance. I scanned my entire binder and emailed it to him that evening. He called me back the next morning and said, "You're good to go. When do you want us out there?" I said, "Saturday morning." He said, "We'll be there at 9:00 a.m. I also contacted a tow impound lot that had a contract with the county. I explained the situation and asked if they could receive a large RV delivered by crane. The manager, a man named Tom, said they could and that impound fees would be $75 per day plus a $200 intake fee. I said that was fine and gave him Gary's contact information so they could coordinate. Then I did one more thing. I contacted the county sheriff's non-emergency line and explained that I would be removing a trespassing vehicle from my property using a private contractor and wanted an officer present to ensure there were no disputes or safety issues. The dispatcher said they would send a deputy to monitor the situation and took down the date and time. Saturday morning arrived. I woke up at 7:00 a.m., made coffee, and waited. At 8:50 a.m., a sheriff's deputy pulled up in a marked SUV. I walked outside and introduced myself. His name was Deputy Castillo. I handed him a printed summary of the situation, including copies of the county citations, the HOA violation, and the police report regarding the threatening note. He reviewed it, nodded, and said, "Understood, I'll be here to keep the peace." At 9:00 a.m. exactly, a massive crane truck turned onto Sycamore Ridge Lane, followed by a flatbed tow truck. Both vehicles had Summit Lift Solutions logos on the side. Gary stepped out of the crane truck. He was a broad-shouldered man in a high-visibility vest and a hard hat. He shook my hand and said, "Let's get this done." The crew went to work immediately. Gary positioned the crane on the street adjacent to my driveway. Two other crew members attached heavy-duty straps to the frame of the RV. The crane's arm extended, the straps tightened, and the entire motorhome lifted off the ground. It rose smoothly, rotated slightly, and was lowered onto the flatbed. The whole process took about 35 minutes. It was methodical, professional, and completely legal. And then Derek came outside. He was wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt. His face was red. He started yelling before he even reached the driveway. He shouted, "What the hell are you doing? That's my RV. You can't do this." Deputy Castillo stepped between Derek and the crew. He said, "Sir, I need you to calm down." Derek ignored him and pointed at me. He shouted, "You're going to pay for this. I'm calling the cops." Deputy Castillo said, "I am the cops, and this is illegal removal of a vehicle trespassing on private property." Derek's mouth opened, but no words came out. He looked at the crane, the flatbed, the deputy, and finally at me. I did not say anything. I simply stood there with my arms crossed. Gary finished securing the RV to the flatbed and handed me a receipt. He said, "All set, it'll be at the impound lot within the hour." I thanked him. The crane and the flatbed pulled away. Derek stood in his driveway, staring. Deputy Castillo approached Derek and handed him a document. He said, "This is the impound notice. Your vehicle is at Highline Impound on Route 26. You can retrieve it once you pay all applicable fees and fines." Derek took the paper and looked at it like it was written in a foreign language. Then he looked at me and said, "This isn't over." I said, "Yes, it is." Deputy Castillo gave me a nod and returned to his vehicle. The street was quiet again. My driveway was clear. Over the next 2 weeks, I received multiple updates. The county confirmed that Derek had been issued a second citation for failure to comply, adding another $150 in fines. The HOA sent a letter stating that Derek now owed $1,400 in daily fines, calculated from the end of the compliance period through the date of removal. The impound lot contacted me to confirm that the RV had been received and that daily storage fees were accruing. Derek did not retrieve the RV for 11 days. By the time he did, he owed the impound lot $1,025 in fees. He also received a certified letter from the HOA demanding payment of fines, which had now reached $1,500. The county sent a final notice stating that failure to pay the citations would result in a lien on his property. 3 weeks after the removal, I received a letter from an attorney representing Derek. It claimed that I had unlawfully removed his vehicle, caused him emotional distress, and demanded $5,000 in damages. I forwarded the letter to Rachel Yee. She responded within 2 hours. Her email said, "This is baseless. You had clear legal authority. I'll draft a response." She sent a formal reply to Derek's attorney citing the county ordinance, the HOA violation, the trespass documentation, and the police report. She also noted that I had coordinated the removal with law enforcement present. The letter concluded, "Your client's vehicle was lawfully removed. Any further frivolous claims will be met with a counterclaim for harassment and abuse of process." I never heard from Derek's attorney again. The HOA board meeting took place on the third Tuesday of the month as scheduled. I attended, so did Derek. The board reviewed the case file, which now included Angela's violation notice, my photographic evidence, the county citations, and the removal documentation. Derek argued that I had overreacted and that the RV was only partially on my property. The board president, a retired engineer named Harold, looked at the survey measurements and said, 6.3 feet is not partial, it's trespass. The board voted unanimously to uphold the fines and add an additional penalty of $500 for failure to comply with the original notice. Total HOA fines now stood at $2,000. The board also placed a formal censure on Derek's account, which would remain on record and could affect any future variance requests or architectural approvals. Derek paid the fines in installments over the next 2 months. The county fines were paid in full to avoid the lien. The impound fees were paid the day he retrieved the RV. The HOA fines were eventually settled through a payment plan. In total, Derek paid approximately $4,700 in fines and fees, plus whatever he paid his attorney for the failed demand letter. My total cost was $1,200 for the crane and impound coordination. I did not hire Rachel Yee beyond the consultation because I did not need to. The documentation, the codes, and the crane did all the work. Derek no longer parks anything in front of my driveway. He no longer leaves notes on my windshield. In fact, he does not acknowledge my existence. When I see him outside, he looks the other way. That is fine with me. I do not need his friendship. I need my driveway clear. And it is. The RV now sits in a storage facility off Highway 36 where it belongs. My driveway is empty, accessible, and entirely mine. I still have the binder. It sits on a shelf in my office, a 3-inch thick testament to the power of documentation and the importance of knowing your rights. I did not yell, I did not threaten, I did not escalate emotionally. I read the codes, followed the process, and enforced my property rights, and when the system moved too slowly, I rented a crane.